Have you ever noticed that one person in your life, maybe a friend or a coworker, who just never overshares? I mean, they aren't posting their breakfast from 3 different angles, and they definitely aren't live tweeting their morning commute. They keep their inner circle incredibly tight. And, in a world that is just completely obsessed with constant attention, they remain a bit of a mystery. Well, welcome to This Explainer. Today we are decoding the fascinating psychology behind people who keep their lives extremely private. Because here's the thing, people look at highly private individuals and immediately assume, oh, they must be secretive or antisocial, or maybe they're hiding something. But as we're going to explore today, that couldn't be further from the truth.
Society kind of tells us that if you aren't sharing every detail, you're disconnected. But when we actually dive into the psychology, we discover something completely different. Keeping your life extremely private is absolutely not a flaw. In fact, it reveals a profound level of emotional maturity and inner security. Today's explainer is going to show you that choosing to keep quiet is actually an advanced sign that your brain is operating on a completely different level.
So to truly understand this, we're going to decode 5 specific psychological traits we found in the research: high privacy orientation, self-concept clarity, protecting cognitive bandwidth, low social dependency, and finally, escaping the digital illusion. All right, let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Number 1, high privacy orientation. So, what does this actually mean? Well, psychologists note that people who keep their lives quiet tend to possess this high privacy orientation. Simply put, you deeply value and maintain strict control over what others see and think about you. And it's not an accident, right? It is a highly deliberate choice. Individuals with this orientation understand a really fundamental truth. Peace thrives in privacy. They realize that in a world literally addicted to oversharing, maintaining a sense of mystery is actually a very real form of power. It's super fascinating because, while most people will eagerly trade their personal lives and innermost thoughts for a quick burst of attention or popularity, highly private people make a totally different calculation. They prefer privacy over popularity. And I want to be really clear here. People with this trait are not hiding from the world. No way. They are simply making a conscious, empowered choice to protect their mental space rather than letting it be consumed by an audience.
All right, moving on to number 2, self-concept clarity. Now, what's really interesting about this concept is how a private life connects directly to a deep understanding of your own identity. Research shows that people who share less often have an incredibly strong, stable sense of who they are. They know their values, they know their goals, and they know what truly matters to them. But here is the real kicker. They know all of this without needing an audience to applaud it. They rely entirely on internal self-validation rather than constantly seeking it from the crowd.
I absolutely love this quote from the source material. Your self-worth has outgrown external validation. I mean, just think about how powerful that is. Highly private people do not tie their core identity to public attention. When you don't need likes or comments or public praise to know you're on the right track, wow, that is a subtle but incredibly powerful sign of inner security. You are completely anchored by your own internal compass.
Which brings us to number 3, protecting cognitive bandwidth.
And this brilliantly illustrates the whole concept. This is all about the exhaustion of the modern attention economy and the very real mental cost of constant public exposure. Look, the human brain has limited cognitive bandwidth. You only have so much mental energy to spend every single day. For a lot of people, managing constant updates or worrying about other people's opinions drains that mental battery incredibly quickly. But notice how gifted and self-aware people allocate a massive slice of their mental energy to deep thinking, learning, and creating, leaving only a tiny little sliver for managing others' opinions.
By choosing to keep life private, you are actively practicing what psychologists call psychological detachment. Why? Because you recognize that constant noise and public exposure are just way too mentally expensive. Instead, you're reallocating your mental energy toward things that actually compound in value over time, like your skills, your personal growth, and your deep relationships. You are protecting your absolute most valuable asset, your focus.
Let's roll into number 4, low social dependency.
This is where we look at how private people find deep comfort and stimulation within their own minds. When we compare this, someone with high social dependency relies really heavily on social validation. They need a massive circle of acquaintances just to feel good about themselves. But on the flip side, people who keep to themselves often exhibit low social dependency. This means you don't need a constant audience. You can actually entertain yourself, you can solve problems completely alone, and you just thrive independently.
Psychologists point out that because people who spend time in private aren't constantly looking outward, they develop a much stronger inner world, a totally richer imagination, and a far deeper level of self-awareness. Their internal experience is so dynamic and stimulating that they simply don't feel the urge to announce every little detail of their life to the outside world. They're completely comfortable in their own company. It proves you literally don't need a live audience to have a fulfilling Friday night.
Let's move to and see how this builds into our final point, number 5, escaping the digital illusion.
This final psychological trait is all about how highly private individuals directly combat the often toxic nature of the digital world. They clearly understand the digital illusion. You know, the way public perception and social media just completely distort reality? This is deeply tied to social comparison theory, which is our psychological tendency to constantly measure our own worth against the highlight reels of others. Well, private people recognize this trap. They know that getting caught up in measuring themselves against carefully curated public personas is a total losing game for their mental health.
So what do they actually do about it? They take proactive steps. They protect their mental health by practicing digital minimalism, totally avoiding the urge to post constant life updates, actively skipping that endless comparison cycle, and ultimately choosing peace over performance. They refuse to participate in the exhausting theater of having to prove their happiness to strangers on the internet.
To bring all of this together, if you are someone who prefers to keep your life to yourself, society might try to make you feel like you're doing something wrong. But let's be real, living privately is not arrogant, and it is definitely not antisocial. It simply means you have a higher standard for your peace, grounded entirely in your own internal standards. You are emotionally secure enough to recognize a very simple truth. Not everything in life deserves an audience.
So the crucial point is, I want to leave you with this question to think about. Is your desire to share driven by a need for genuine connection or just the need for an audience? Take a moment to evaluate your own relationship with privacy, external validation, and your own mental peace. Because sometimes, the absolute most profound thing you can say to the world is nothing at all. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep exploring the fascinating psychology of how we live.